Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Intenth RC. We are back. Yeah, it took a little bit of a hiatus from filming over the summer and fall to work on my project car, and now that the weather outside's kind of turned to crap, not much of that is going on. Anyways, today I wanted to show you something that I've been working on. You've seen this tribute truck before. This is my '84 Toyota Extra Cab replicating a vehicle that I had when I was a little younger. We're not going to mention any dates or ages or anything like that. But the goal here is to try and replicate my old truck as best as possible. You guys watched the prior video, and there will be more in the future. I fabricated this box out of styrene, pretty accurately representing the box that I had. I didn't build the first one, the prior owner of the truck did, but it looked very much like this. Unfortunately, I don't have any reference pictures. I'm going off memory, but it's actually looking about right. I've still got a little bit of work to do on it. I got to work out the taillights and some minor details like that, but whatever. That's not why we're here today. Today we're here to discuss something that I've run into with this truck, and I'm kind of running into a little bit with some of my other TF2s, but it's really bad on this one. And that is, once you get a scale engine and a scale engine bay and all that junk, you really start running into trouble as to where to put your steering servo. And what I have managed to do is relocate my steering servo to a place where you just simply can't see it, and it steers the truck and it doesn't get in the way of the engine bay, the drivetrain, the suspension, any of that junk. So we're going to switch cameras, bring you in for a close-up view, and I'll show you what I did. So turning our attention to the engine bay for a moment here, you can see that with the scale engine where it is, I haven't even hardly got room for a radiator. I'm going to have to do a little rearranging up here to make room for it. But she's pretty tight. And putting a steering servo here, I really don't have a lot of clearance to the fan, and then I start running into the grill and the bumper and all that jazz. And of course, as you can see, between the engines and the shock towers, that's not going to happen either. So I have a very serious space problem. And, well, I'm going to show you how I managed to handle that. It was kind of creative, I'll say that much. So here we have the industrial view of the thing. And immediately, I guess you're going to notice this servo right here. And that is, in fact, my steering servo. If you have a TF2 with a 2-speed, the shift servo is going to go on this side, and these are the mounting holes for it. And because of where my drive shaft is and everything else, I determined that it was going to be much better to put it off on the driver's side of the truck instead of the passenger side. So the servo was mounted using a couple of posts. I reused a hole here, an existing hole, and then I drilled a hole in the plate on this side. When I was setting this up in the first place, I very simply used servo mounting tape to figure out where it needed to be before I started drilling holes, and I would recommend you do the same. And then you can see the drag link here. You can just see it there. The paint isn't altogether that great because I scratched it up, taking it in and out a bunch of times while I worked it out, but it's a brass rod that I threaded on both ends. And let me just flip the truck over, that might help. Threaded it on both ends, and then just put some rod ends onto and gave it a little bit of a bend where I needed to bend it. And that does the duty of transferring the forward and aft motion of the servo to left and right steering. The real key to the operation kind of comes as a bit of an unadvertised bonus with the Yoda 2 axles, and that's these steering arms that are double-ended, so that you could put your tie rod either ahead of the axle or behind the axle, and that leaves one tab unused. And then you would, at that point, use one of the unused tabs to run your drag link to the steering servo, which presumably is going to be up here or up here, but in this case it's not. So this is the thing that I had to create to make all of this happen. And this is a custom steering arm that I fabricated out of a piece of, I think it was 14 gauge steel. You just turn that out a little bit, and you can see it's kind of U-shaped, and that's where it connects to the drag link. And the big U-shape is so that it can hook around the shock absorber without interfering with it. And believe it or not, real world one-to-one trucks do sometimes use a big hook steering arm for exactly the same reason. With it all painted black, I got to repaint it because I scratched it up. It kind of disappears into the chassis, and it's really not that obvious. And of course, once the fender wells are in and the body's on, the whole shooting match, you'd barely know it was there. So I'm pretty happy with the result. I had some clearance issues I had to deal with because, as you can see, I did a spring under conversion to lower the truck. So I have a limited amount of space moving upwards and a limited amount of space moving downwards to the spring pad on the axle. And the cool thing about all that is that, you know, I can put this in a vise and bend the arm a little bit up or a little bit down for more clearance one way or the other. And it did leave me with some suspension travel. So I'm happy with that. So a lot of this is kind of in rough draft as I do final tweaks and stuff. And I still have to play with my servo throw. But obviously steering the wheel right and left steers the truck right and left. And see if I can kind of get over top of it. The throw's pretty good now. I'm going to give it a little bit more. But what I've got going on here is I've just got a tiny little bit more before I hit that cross member, which I can adjust for, and I can even hug out the bottom of the cross member just a little bit if I have to. And then of course going forward I've got plenty of space. So there it is in action right there, you know, working as intended. And I'm really happy with that. Alright, so here's the piece of plastic that I used to template this, because it's a lot easier to work in plastic, get it sorted out, and then cut the whole thing out of steel. And it's just a piece of polystyrene. It's about 1 millimeter thick. And I just kind of figured out where I had to drill my holes and how I had to carve this thing out to clear the shock absorber and everything else. And you can see that these two holes are not in line with each other, because as we move over top of the factory steering arm, you can see that this hole is in line with this hole, but the center hole is actually inset slightly. So there's a difference of, I think it's about 2 millimeters there. Where I offset these two holes from each other. I suppose, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if the thing, you know, if the holes were perfectly in line with each other. I don't think that would have too much of a negative effect. I don't remember what my measurements were. That was about 19 millimeters hole to hole there. Could have been 20, whatever the case may be. And then hole to hole over here. 23, 24, whatever. If y'all are interested, I can send you exact dimensions and you can sort of work it out from there. But yeah, I templated in this, transferred it to steel, and then once I had it in steel, I just got the Dremel going and in the grinder, and I just made it a little bit thinner and a little bit smaller so it wouldn't look as blatantly obvious as, you know, kind of a non-scale part, if you will, because this obviously is really, really chunky. It's probably worth mentioning to you guys that even though I put the steering on the driver's side of the truck, it might work out better for you to put it on the passenger side, depending on, you know, where your drive shafts are and this, that, and the other thing. And this little steering arm that I created, you know, is reversible. It's as simple as flipping it over and putting it on the other side of the truck, you know, as long as you have the Yoda 2 axles with the double-ended steering arm on them. So I just thought I'd point that out to you. Just because the driver's side doesn't work out for you, the passenger side might. Hopefully, this is something that'll help you out. And if you want specific dimensions on this thing, I can totally hook you up. Just get in contact with me. No charge. I'll just tell you where to plot your points and you just go carving from there. If you're interested in some more scale build details and scale builds, you're definitely going to want to stay tuned to Intent RC. Coming up, we're going to be doing a bunch of build series videos on various projects that Greg and I have going on. One of which, for example, here is this 1964 Chevrolet. I'm building it, yes, the body is not mounted yet, as a 1-ton 2-wheel drive, like a farm truck kind of deal. And you're going to find that interesting, and I've got my 4Runner off in the background, and we've got a very, very special scale project coming up that I don't want to blow the lid off just yet. So stick around, and you can kind of get some workbench views and maybe some ideas. And we definitely want your thoughts and opinions on this stuff too as we move forward. If there's anything that we're doing and you'd like to see it done this way or see this particular treatment applied, we're certainly willing to take your suggestions. So drop comments below on this video or anything you'd like to see coming forth out of us, and we will catch you on the flip side. Thanks for watching.